Welcome back. Another Tuesday night, another BBQ Pit MMA, BBQ Pit Sports. We are starting today. We just did our 2022 NFL mock draft, 2 rounds. We recorded it. We will be uploading it right after I'm done recording this. So make sure you go check that out. And here we go. UFC Vegas 53. We're going to kick it right off. Rob Font versus Marlon Vera. So Rob Font comes into this fight a slight favorite with great boxing. He is 19-5 with 8 wins by knockout and 4 wins by submission. He's never been knocked out in his professional career and has only been submitted in 1 of his 5 losses. He's 8-4 in the UFC, and he lost his last fight by decision to Jose Aldo in December. Prior to that fight, he was on a 4-fight winning streak that included Sergio Pettis, Ricky Simone, Marlon Moraes, and Cody Garbrandt. He's got, like I said, great boxing. He's a big bantamweight. He's fought his whole career at featherweight and then made his bantamweight debut in his UFC debut, and then has fought bantamweight his entire time since he's been in the UFC. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's going against a black belt in jiu-jitsu in Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera is 18-7 with 7 wins by knockout and 8 wins by submission. He's never been finished his professional career. He's 12-6 in the UFC. He's currently on a 2-fight winning streak with a decision win over Davey Grant and a knockout win over Frankie Edgar. He also has UFC wins over Sean O'Malley. That was due to a leg injury. Andre Ewell and Guido Canetti. So Marlon Vera has some impressive wins. He's black belt in jiu-jitsu. He trains at RVCA. He's a big bantamweight, good leg kicks, and he's coming in with better jiu-jitsu than Rob Font. So Marlon Vera's goal is probably going to be to get this fight to the ground. Rob Font's got good takedown defense and great boxing. I think if he keeps it standing, he definitely wins a decision. I'm going to go Rob Font there by decision. Or, maybe first time Marlon Vera gets finished, first time he gets knocked out, Rob Font might knock him out. Andrei Arlovski versus Jake Collier is another good one. That should be the co-main event this weekend. Arlovski is 33-20-2. He's fought for the UFC from his first stint in the UFC was from 2000 and 2008. Then he came back in 2014. He's currently on a 3-fight winning streak right now, winning decisions over Chase Sherman, Carlos Felipe, and Jared Vandeira. He's got 17 career wins by knockout and 3 by submission. 11 out of 20 of his losses are via knockout as well. He went 10-4 with his first stint in the UFC, his first 8 years. Left the UFC, came back. He won the UFC heavyweight title in his first run. And then in his most current run, he is 12-10-1. He has been coming into his own his last couple fights, and he has been known as the young talent killer in the past 2 years, beating Carlos Felipe, Jared Vandeira, Chase Sherman, Tanner Boser, and Felipe Lenz, all within the past 2 years. All 5 of those guys were supposed to be promising prospects in the UFC. Chase Sherman just got released and brought back. Jared Vandeira still on his way up in the rankings. Carlos Felipe taking a doping violation. He's out. Tanner Boser still on his way up. Felipe Lenz is still on the way up. So although Arlovski beat these guys, it didn't ruin their career, and they're still on their way up in the heavyweight division, which just says something about how good Andrei Arlovski is still at this point in his career. Jake Collier, his opponent's 13-6 with 5 knockout wins and 4 wins by submission. He's 5-5 in the UFC, going loss-win for the entirety of his UFC career. He took some time off after a decision win against Marcel Fortuna in 2017, came back in 2020, lost via knockout to Tom Aspinall, and then since his return, he has lost to Tom Aspinall and Carlos Felipe by split decision, while winning against John Vellante and Chase Sherman being his most recent fight back in January. He's been knocked out in 3 out of his 6 losses. I think this plays directly into Andrei Arlovski's amazing kickboxing skills. He's also a world-class combat sambo fighter. So if the fight goes to the ground, I have full confidence in Andrei Arlovski. If the fight stays standing, I think he's able to knock him out. So I'm going to go Andrei Arlovski via TKO just because that's safe. You could TKO him on the ground. You could TKO him standing up. So I'm going to go Andre Arlovski there. Andre Fili versus Joe Anderson Brito, I think is a little bit of a stretch in talent level there. Andre Fili's 21-8-1. The no contest was his last fight against Daniel Pineda, where he accidentally eye-poked Pineda. Pineda was unable to finish, which resulted in a no contest. He has 9 wins by knockout, 9 wins via decision. He's been in the UFC since 2013, and in that time has a record of 9-7-1. He is 1-2-1 in the last 2 years. He needs a win right now. Desperately needs a win. He's coming into this fight with a 3-inch height and a 2-inch reach advantage over Joe Anderson Brito, who is 12-3-1 with 6 wins via submission and 4 wins via knockout. He's never been knocked out in his professional career, and he's only been submitted in 1 of his 3 losses. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He lost his debut by decision to Bill Algeo. He was on an 11-fight win streak before making his UFC debut, including his decision win over Diego Lopes at Dana White Contender Series in 2021, where he earned his UFC contract. In his 11-fight win streak, he only fought 2 men that had a below 500 record, and he only fought 1 man that had less than 5 professional fights. So a lot of guys that rack up these big win streaks, going into their UFC, and then they lose in the UFC, and they look back and they say, oh, well, they weren't really fighting the highest level of talent, that they could have been prior to getting into the UFC. This guy, although he might not have been fighting the highest level of talent, he was still fighting really good, really, really, really good fighters, and was on an 11-fight win streak, won his contract, and then just happened to lose to Bill Algeo, who is a beast. With that being said, I'm still going Andre Fili. I think the decision is in the cards for him, so Andre Fili there via decision, in my opinion. Excuse me. Jared Gordon versus Grant Dawson. This is a good one. I have to be a little biased, and I like Jared Gordon. He's coming into this fight plus 145. I don't think that's right. He is 18-4 with 10 wins via decision, and he is 6-4 via knockout. So he lives and dies by the knockout. He's 6-3 in the UFC, and he's currently on a 3-fight winning streak right now, which includes decision wins over Chris Fishgold, Danny Chavez, and Joe Solecki. Joe Solecki is how I think you say his name. He's got 3 UFC losses that include Charles Oliveira, Joaquim Silva, and Carlos Diego Ferreira. So other than Joaquim Silva, which was a flash knockout, Charles Oliveira is the current lightweight champion, and Carlos Diego Ferreira is one of the most promising lightweights in that division right now. He won the Cage Fury Fighting Championship featherweight title, and then immediately moved to lightweight maybe 2 or 3 fights into his UFC career. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, same as Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson is 17-1-1. He fought to a majority draw in his last fight against Ricky Glenn in October. His only professional loss was a TKO loss to Hugh Pooley at Kansas City Fighting Alliance 18 in 2016. He won his UFC contract on the Contender Series in 2017 with a submission win over Adrian Diaz. He's 4-0-1 in the UFC. He's got wins over Julian Erosa, Michael Trezano, Derek Minner, Nad Naramandi, and Leonardo Santos. 11 wins via submission and 4 wins via knockout. So I think his bread and butter is his grappling, his submission game. And he's coming into this fight a brown belt the same as Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon has great wrestling skills. I think Jared Gordon is able to offset the grappling of Grant Dawson, and then now we're talking about it's just a striking matchup, and that's hard to beat Jared Gordon in a striking matchup. So I'm going to easily go Jared Gordon there at plus 145. I wish I was still in that competition, because you just put him at the plus 150, and I'm taking him, and I'm getting a pick back easily. Darren Elkins, Tristan Connolly. Of course, we left one fight off. This is not being one of them. Darren Elkins, 26-10 as a pro, 12 wins via decision and 9 via knockout. He's got 4 losses via knockout and 1 loss via submission, making up 50% of his losses. He is 15-9 in the UFC, and he's been in the UFC since his TKO win over Dwayne Ludwig in 2010, so 12 years in the company. He's 2-5 in his last 7 fights, with his only wins being over Luis Eduardo Garagori and Derek Minner. He lost his most recent fight in December to Cub Swanson. Other recent losses include Nate Landwehr, Ryan Hall, Ricardo Lamas, and Alexander Volkanovski back in 2017. He's a former Division II wrestler, NCAA Division II wrestler, and he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He's going up against a tough as nails Tristan Connolly. Connolly is 14-7 with 9 wins via submission and only 4 by knockout, meaning he only has 1 decision victory. Right? Yep, 1 decision victory. 5 out of 7 of his losses are via decision, and he is 1-1 in the UFC. Won a decision over Michel Pereira, and then lost a decision to Pat Sabatini in April of last year. So he's coming in over a year off. Connolly and Elkins are both extremely tough guys, man. They could both take a beating and dish a beating out. I think Connolly is a little bit better of a grappler, but this will likely be a striking bout, as both men are very hard to finish, and both men have great grappling skills. Let me just look back really quick. Take a look at the odds. Plus 140. I'm going to go Darren Elkins, the veteran, and the favorite in this fight to win a decision more than likely. Prelims, which Krzysztof Jotko and Gerald Mearshart is slated to be on the main card, but I did not preview that fight. So I have it listed here as the prelims, although it is probably on the main card. Daniel Lacerda will be taking on Francisco Figueiredo. Gabriel Green will be fighting Johan Lanisi. Alexander Romanov and Chase Sherman are rumored to be back on this card as well. They just pushed it back a week as far as I could tell. Matan Levy will be going up against Mike Breeden. Gina Mazzani against Shayna Young. Tetsuro Tiria will be going up against Carlos Candefano. And then, of course, the Alexander Romanov-Chase Sherman fight, which Romanov is coming in at a minus 2,000 favorite. So just going to take one little glance into what is next for the UFC. I believe it is a pay-per-view. Yes, UFC 274, May 7th. Let me just take a look at the calendar to make sure they don't skip a week. That is correct, May 7th. And that will be Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje for the lightweight title, and Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza for the women's strawweight title. Also on the card, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson, Shogun versus OSP, Donald Cerrone versus Joe Lozon. And that's just the main card. Randy Brown will be taking on Chaos Williams, Macy Chastain versus Norma Dumont, Brandon Royval versus Matt Schnell. Jesus Christmas, this is a deep card. And you think like I get it. You know, you need to beef up a pay-per-view card. People got to pay for it. You got to beef it up. But I mean, Randy Brown, Chaos Williams could have co-main evented a fight night. These last 2 fight nights have been extremely weak besides the main event and the co-main event. And Randy Brown, Chaos Williams, 100% could have co-main evented one of those fight nights. Shit, Francisco Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts could have been, you know, a 3rd to 4th last fight, and put together a good main card in one of these fight nights. They'd opted not to do that. Stack it all in for a pay-per-view, and that is what we have to look forward to. I'm not going to just do the mock draft for football. I'm going to keep up with it. We're going to be doing, breaking news, maybe every Tuesday or something. There's going to be some kind of, NBA playoffs. We're going to be doing something for maybe the finals or something like that. But it is not over for the BBQ Pit Sports. We will keep going. And until next time, stay barbecued. We'll see you next Tuesday, motherfuckers.